Welcome to Griffiss Grounds, your connection to people, entrepreneurs, and experts in industry, academia, and government. Today, I'm joined by Catherine Dare, the Chief Executive Manager of TRM Environment and 2022 Women Investing in Women Award recipient. Welcome.
Thank you.
Can you share the vision behind your business?
I try to bring together my personal experience and appreciation for the environment and to understand the need to protect that, but still function in that world. So we do construction inspection support. So you need to construct something, but to do well and still do well for the environment, right? So you want to be progressive, you want to build things, but you want to do them in the most least impactful way, from footprint, from environmental impact, from restoring things to a use, even though they've been blighted, or how you clean things up. And that those are the underlying aspects of what we try to focus on in our services that we offer.
What inspired you to take on TRM Environmental?
I originally started my career in the greater Philadelphia area. There's enormous opportunity when you're in a big metropolitan area like that. I had kids and we wanted a good environment to raise a family where we worked from a community living standpoint. It was not a great environment to necessarily raise our kids. So we moved back to central New York, but doing what I did down there and doing that up here are two totally different things. And I brought my job with me. And when I no longer had that as an option, I needed to make some different choices. And unfortunately, that all happened. I don't think at the time I realized how significant it is, but now there's a lot of people that are like, oh, yeah, and that horrible economic downturn in 2008, 2009, which is when the job that I brought with me was no longer an option for me. It was when I was trying to figure out what I was going to do next and finding that next thing in that environment. I thought it was just central New York, but I guess it was just a really bad time frame to be the person searching for your next opportunity.
Right.
And this was that next opportunity because the relationships that I had built in the position I was in with my team members, who had some of them were also intentionally had to move on, or some of them had wandered off, were then reaching back out and saying, hey, we have these teams, we know you're really good at what you do, can you come work with us? And the easiest way to do that was to do that as like a sole proprietor, to figure out how to do that and still work in those spaces.
It's scary as a female, a mom, raising kids, and then moving to central New York from your home base. In a male-dominated industry, how did you overcome that?
The team I was on for 15 years, lots of things. I'm a Bucknell grad. When I went, my class was 25% women. Graduated in 1988, it was 25% women. I went back for my 30th reunion. Professor we all adored was hosting us. He was a geotech person. That's my primary passion, is geotechnical issues. And I was like, hey, are we closer to 30 or 50%? He goes, no, that was the biggest class we ever had.
Really?
He's like, all the women go like geoscience, they don't go engineering. And I looked at him and I said, and that's because we don't make the engineering space female friendly. That's why they're not choosing it, because they do not feel welcome here. And that's a problem we have as an industry that we need to fix. And I was disheartened by that. So I guess that's why I fight to stay in this space, because I think you're missing out on an enormous amount of input and knowledge when you don't make it inclusive.
Yeah. How many people do you currently employ?
We have 5 people. Not all of them are full-time, but there are 5 people that are on payroll.
And when was TRM Environmental started?
2014.
And you took over in 2014?
I became the 51% owner in 2014. Yeah.
Good for you. What do you find most challenging, having your staff and TRM Environmental in Rome, New York?
Well, I was born and raised in Rome, so although I was in the greater Philadelphia area for over 15 years, I'm from the area. So we moved back. I still have my family is still very local. So we chose this area deliberately. It's just it's not as worldly. It's not that in the environment I worked in when I was in the greater Philadelphia area, half my management were women. It was like 50-50. In the firm, it was like 120 of us plus or minus, and half of the managers in any given space were women. And if I walk in an engineering office in central New York, there may be women in that space, but they are not engineers and they are not in equal levels of responsibility. And so the day-to-day people that interact do not always have a woman sitting next to them. So I'm still an anomaly rather than like something that they routinely encounter. I see that maybe eventually flipping over a little bit, but it's 10, 15 years younger than me, not necessarily in my age range in Central New York.
Yeah. Would you consider that a proud moment for yourself that you're overcoming that hurdle or you're tackling it at least?
I guess if you want to, I don't know. I guess I'm disheartened that I'm still an anomaly, right? I mean, I looked at the disparity for women in construction. I'm an engineer, but I work in the constructed space.
Right.
I always have. And there's a 90% disparity the last time you see the assessment, and for women in central New York in the construction world, 90% disparity. You know, I know there's some statistics that are just overwhelming to me. When I graduated college in '88, if you look at the SBA rules, I would not have been able to take a business loan without my father co-signing in 1988. I mean, that's just outrageous to me. I'm the oldest of four. I have three sisters and a brother who is the youngest. So my dad was always very supportive of whatever it is that we wanted to do. So the fact that I would have to go to him and him co-sign a business loan, I'm like, no, I can't even believe that was real. You know?
Yeah. I look back, you say that statistic, I've heard that before, and I think we've talked about it too in a women investing in women forum that we had conversing. But I also remember there was a statistic floating around of currently today, I think it was like the last time it was measured was in 2019, but 34% of females in STEM fields go on to graduate to find a job. And currently within like the Griffiss Institute ecosystem, we're sitting around about 29% of females in our intern programs and STEM camps. So we're still below national average in there. What do we as women have to do to help have better avenues for the next generation of females coming up to know that they have the mentoring that's available, the opportunities at their tip of their fingertips, and doors are open?
So I actually, by default, hosted somebody through the BOCES program last year because they placed her somewhere that wasn't what she wanted to do. Like if you say, oh, I want to do engineering, all engineering is not the same, right? So if you want to do environmental engineering, then you want to do environmental engineering, right? So then this person was in like doing mechanical, which is a very small subset of environmental. You can do both, but if you don't know what you're doing and you're trying to figure it out, I'm not sure that's where I would have put somebody, right? Being a person in the industry. So I worked hard to work with that person who is a senior to give them exposure, to explain to them what they could do, to show them that you can do that in this space. I hired several women interns when I first started my job. Like that, I try to seek out, I'm not exclusionary, but if there is an option, then I will, definitely pursue that option because I think they need to get the opportunity. I think it's hard to figure out, most women in high school like the ones out there digging a ditch, right? But that's the entry level construction. It's just not like I help. My dad did work at my lake house, and I remember he instead he would pay me to mow the lawn, or he paid somebody else. So he paid me to mow the lawn. Maybe that was an anomaly when I was in high school, but I said my dad treated me as an equal, so he paid me to mow the lawn. If he hired the neighborhood kid at the lake to help shovel topsoil, if as long as I worked as hard as he did, he paid me as much as the kid, he was lifting God knows how much because he was at college. He could have gotten free ride swimming for college. So he was a big muscular guy. We all water skied, and he was like, "Yeah, you're moving as much dirt as he is." So he paid me as much as he's paying him. But so I had, I guess, that opportunity to do those things. But you have to give people the space to understand what that position is, right? You have to give women the chance to be in that space and make it attractive for them to be there, or find examples of women that are doing that are happy and successful, so you can say, oh, I can do that, right? Like, you need one person, like the first person to break the 4-minute mile. It's like, okay, once one person did, everybody could, right? So you need to find those examples of women, or connect them with women and what it is they want to do, and show them they can do it, and have them explain the path they went through to get there. I don't know how else to do that, to make it more comfortable, more acceptable, and make sure they understand that it's inclusive. But, I also had colleagues that I worked with that were like, I don't want my kids to ever be engineers. Like, I wouldn't, and they were fellow Bucknellians, so it's not like they didn't have opportunity, right? They're like, I don't want my kids to ever be a civil engineer. Like, this is, I don't find this rewarding. So I don't know, but you've got to find a space where it's comfortable, where you can, it's not so that it can be a very demanding profession. So you've got to figure out how to make it so you can still live a life, have kids, and figure out how to balance those things out.
How did you figure that out? Who was your mentor? Or did you pave the path your own way with needs and wants that you knew deep inside?
Yes. I knew I worked in a space where people could go part-time for whatever reason. There were people that did it for a lot of different reasons. Not everybody did it because they had kids. I did it because I had kids. I said, okay, I traveled a lot. I was on hazardous waste sites. And when I wanted to have kids, I'm like all the training they give you on exposures and OSHA issues and stuff. I'm like, okay, so I didn't have to tell them I'm pregnant. There's probably an environment I could be in, I probably shouldn't be in, right? Mm-hmm. And so we had conversations like, yeah, you probably shouldn't do that. And then eventually I lost the certifications because I didn't keep them. And I made the decision to breastfeed, which just put me farther away from that, because I'm creating sensitive receptor populations by the choices that I'm making, right? So I guess I worked through that, and I said, this is what I want to do. I don't want to walk away from this, but I don't want to travel, and I want to be part-time. And so I set a schedule 3 days a week to work part-time so I could maintain my relevance and my skill set, so I didn't lose it, and I still had something to contribute. And I was very good at what I did, so I didn't really want to give up on all the projects. Most of the projects that I worked on were long-term. Some of them take 20 years from, maybe they're still trying to figure out some of this stuff, but they're still doing monitoring at it, right? So, to walk away from all that, as long as the firm I had still had the contract, you're invested. You still want to see the task completed. You still want to make sure the projects, continue your contribution, to get up to speed on something and understand all the issues, to try to resolve them and see it to fruition. So I worked to create 3 days a week so that I could still be around my family and I could still have professional presence.
Is that human-centric mindset any bit of inspiration for you wanting to own your own practice?
It is, because I guess looking at that, I feel like the industry is not creating, there were not lots of spaces that are female friendly to allow you to say, okay, how do I deal with my kids? How do I go home sick? How do I work remotely? How do I take 6 months off before I'm ready to come back? I mean, New York State is lots of programs with the parental leave and disability, and all those combinations, trying to make those spaces. But you also have to be in an environment where everybody's supportive of that. I had a male employee that wanted to go out on parental leave, and the teams he was on was like, oh, so he'll be back in 2 weeks. I'm like, no, he wants to take the full 20 weeks. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, you're allowed in the state of New York. I'm like, when I had my second kid, my spouse did. He worked for utility. He had great benefits. So we had saved money. It wasn't all paid, but that's what he did, So I'm like, if he chooses to do that, you've got to give people the space to do that. And you can't look down on them for making that choice.
Right.
And I just think you have to be supportive of those choices for people to be human centric, right? I just think creating an environment so that people want to be there, they feel supported, and then that's how they do great work.
Yeah. What innovations is pushing TRM Environmental right now?
I don't know, innovations. I guess there are initiatives. I guess I would look at it differently. So one of the things I worked on this past year was I've been an EPA contractor on various teams for over 30 years. I worked on the multiple grants that the Biden administration has for electrification. So I was a grant reviewer for the grants that they've given out for clean ports, for clean energy, for tribes and territories. There were 3 different teams I was on this past summer reviewing grant applications. I think, so that's a technology driven thing. New York is trying to make surface water and, the stormwater sewer separations, or EPA has initiatives. I mean, the next hazardous waste that will probably be regulated is PFAS. I mean, all those things are leading technologies, but they're like initiative driven things that then you tend to pivot to be able to support, to make sure that you can be part of the solution for those initiatives. I think people are trying to figure out how to incorporate drone technology in either health and safety or construction inspection, or figuring it out. Maybe you get to a point where you don't have, there may be instances I could see where it's going to create a safer environment because you don't put people in hazardous environments when you don't need to.
Right.
But there is, I don't know if we have the 3D imaging to the point where you can completely replace people on site. I don't know if that level of knowledge is there yet. Maybe we get to that point where you don't need a person there. But I guess I don't, technology doesn't drive civil engineering as much. Doesn't move. It's not,
you still need that human touch.
Yeah, I guess. There's still a human touch there, I guess, that I see, that not completely displaceable. So
very cool. Are you able to talk about any upcoming projects that you're working on?
TRM is currently supporting the city of Rome. They're building the road for what was the Y space. So we have staff out there that's supporting the city of Rome for that effort. There's a soon to be awarded project in Rensselaer for sewer upgrades. There's a lot of the sewer plants to treat wastewater were built in the 1950s, so they're old and the equipment is degraded or not working or dysfunctional. And then if it doesn't work right, then you bypass the plant and it just goes out to the streams, which is not friendly for anybody. Mm-hmm. It's one third world country kind of things. So they're working very hard in the state of New York to upgrade the plant. So we're still doing a fair amount of work in supporting upgrades and replacements to things like that. I guess technology wise, they're also trying to understand infiltration and inflow. So they're using a lot of sonar and sound and technology to try to understand the behavior of that water in the storm sewers. Where is it coming from? If there's holes, if you treat groundwater and surface water runoff in a sewage plant, that water doesn't really need to be treated, and that displaces the space for the water that does need to be treated. And it's costly to treat water that is unnecessarily treated. It reduces efficiency. So everybody's working hard to try to figure out how to get water that doesn't really need to be treated but finds itself in the sewer system out.
Right.
So those things have more technology related to them. So we support ADS in trying to assess those monitors and meters, and
A lot of stuff that you do happens behind the scenes that really nobody knows about, that has an impact on their day-to-day lives,
right,
long-term and
Yes.
short-term.
right.
Does that bother you that sometimes maybe you don't get that full credit because it's working so much behind the scenes?
I guess, or as a woman-owned business, right, certified at federal, state level, we work to try to help people meet their goals and provide a meaningful, be a meaningful team member. I think, in general, you're striving to be that person, I guess, behind the scenes. Or I know when I've gone through business development, they're like, oh, you need to quantify your cost savings or what you did. But usually the piece we bring to the table is a very small piece of a larger team. And so to extract those numbers, we don't always necessarily have access to them, right? Or if you're reviewing something on behalf of EPA, then you're only seeing one small piece of something technologically, or you share your insights to what's going on, what could be improved, what couldn't, but you're not always in the room when the tough choices are made, which is fine. I mean, you're giving them the knowledge, like somebody armed to go into debate. You're the one doing the research for the debate, and then they sit in that room and they resolve it. Whether you're the intern for a senator who's giving them all the information and he's walking into like the Senate floor, but you're not in there. I guess that's more what I would relate it to, right? You're the person behind the scenes is trying to build the case or create or find the data and the trends and the magic in there to try to figure out what really is working, what isn't.
Yeah, I think you're a pivotal piece in infrastructural economic growth that needs to be talked about more.
I guess you're just civil engineering in general is an unsung hero, right? Like you're doing drinking water, you're doing roads, you're doing infrastructure, you're doing sewers,
Yeah.
you're doing transportation. I mean, those are very public things that you're the person behind them trying to make sure that people are safe, they have what they need, the infrastructure is there and functioning properly. And I guess you're doing your job if nobody notices, right? Because then the lights came on, your toilet flushed, the water came out of the sink, right? Like,
Right.
if you can check all those boxes, people are like, oh, what are your blessings for the day? Sometimes like, okay, I have all those things, but there was somebody behind the scenes that did something to make sure all those things worked.
Right. I hear you talk about, the community and, the city of Rome and working with other folks and individuals. What does community mean to you? What is this community in Rome, New York, Oneida County? What does it mean to you?
I guess it's home. I think it's a vibrant community that's very environmentally grounded, right? Like you're very close to the Adirondack Park. You have a lot of water. You have the Erie Canal running through here. You have so many resources that I think are important, that bring value to people's lives. I mean, you have a ski center that's right out, like right on your back door. You have so much opportunity to enjoy the outdoors and appreciate it, which I think brings value to people's lives to enjoy that. And I think the city of Rome was working hard to make those spaces better. We also supported the upgrades to the parks in downtown Rome, making those spaces more inviting. And I think like those are good things, right? I mean, it's a reasonable place to raise kids and to enjoy the outdoors and still, make a living. And I think Oneida County and Rome are part of that fabric that can make for a rich life for people.
In 2022, we talked about briefly, you did participate in the Women Investing in Women.
Yes.
What sparked you to apply for that grant through Women's Fund and BARD?
2022 was one of those pivotal years, and coming out of both the Entrepreneur Network I was a part of and the SBA Rising program, um, I created a website as a landing page to get certified, but the website wasn't really filled out, right? So everybody's like, oh, what are you marketing? What are you doing? What? And I'm like, I don't know. Like I could list 200 things that I can do, right? But you need to find the things that you're really good at and focus on that. You can't do it all if you're a less than 10 employee, if you're a micro employer, you can't do it all. So but then you have to figure out what are people buying, right? Like you can solve the problem, but you have to figure out what problems you can solve and that your background fits. So it took me a little while, and I needed to upgrade that website. The website was not informative. That was the biggest marketing thing that you need. And so, but getting the funding to do all that as you're growing your business as a small business is always very difficult. So that was one of the things I needed to do. And that grant was an opportunity for me to build out my website. So I found other women entrepreneurs to support and build out my website. And I think that's what I used the funding for. I was blessed enough to be one of the recipients. And I think the website has served its purpose. People reference it, they go to it. I've gotten referrals from it. So
it's a beautiful site.
And thank you. But yes, that's what I did. I would say I successfully used the funds. They've made a difference. They served the purpose that I was trying to fulfill. So
yeah. And since you participated in the Women Investing in Women and were the award recipient, we've been very gracious to have you on site too for other ceremonies that we do. You come back last year and supported last year's recipients. We see you at Coffee and Concepts. So you've really made like this ecosystem part of your network as well. So we appreciate you always participating in that and seeing your face. And hopefully it helps build your community and network as well.
I guess I like coming out here. There's an entrepreneurial vibe definitely out here. And this tends to attract, I guess, bright thinkers, right? Like, you are sharpened by people that are, if you ever are in a room and you feel like you're the brightest person in the room, then you've outgrown the room. So the goal is to always find a space where somebody's stretching you or has a different perspective or brings something else to the table, or just being around people that are like-minded or growth-oriented or always seeking to connect with others. And there are environmental opportunities out here at Griffiss, not as many as some of the other industries that are out here, but there are. So I continually come out and work to try to identify those. But just being in a space where there's other people that are striving and pulling for, whether it's entrepreneurial or building a community, is a reason that brings me out to not just be sitting in my office. So.
Yeah, we appreciate that. If you had to give advice to the next generation, 4th grader, 10th grader, sitting in a row, what would you tell them?
I graduated from high school with the highest art honors and the lowest math honors. And I tried to find something to do both of them, do them together. So civil engineering, when I started, you drafted by hand. So in my mind, I could use my art skills and my math skills to bring those together. Now, there is not a lot of art in the civil engineering world, hence post, college graduation and working in that field. But that was my mindset, was trying to figure out how to bring those two things together. I also, GE is big in this area. So I remember in high school, I took a test on, do you have the aptitude for being an engineer? And I remember getting the scores back, and I was like on the line, just over in management, but close to engineering. And I was like, yeah, but I do not think I would be fulfilled if I was managing peanuts or something, right? Like that would not be fulfilling. So I'm like, you can do management and engineering. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to lean on the engineering. And if I end up in management eventually, that's fine. But while I'm getting to the point where I'm ready to manage things, I will be doing something meaningful in the process. So I think there are tests and skills. Like there are things, Bucknell used to call it the raw carrot test, right? Some of the questions you started with, like how do you like this? How do you like that? What are those personality traits tend to be people that go into these fields. And I think, you need to lean into that. Like there are things that you like and things that you don't, and maybe you don't even know why, but that will put you in those rooms where you try to figure it out and figure out what's important to you, right? Like you make a life out of things you love, right? Like life is good. Like love what you do, right?
Right.
So, I mean, you've got to figure out how to blend those two things together. And maybe you need to think outside the box about that a little bit, right? Like it was atypical the way I chose it, but that's part of, I guess, how it got me where I am.
Yeah, I love it. I think the saying is, love what you do and you never work a day in your life.
Right. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And I think that's true. Most people that walk through the doors here, and you can kind of sense it too, they really do have the passion for what they're doing. It's not a job or a career. It's really a passion, and they find that purpose. And I can see and sense that with you as well, as you're talking about your environmental work and civil engineering, and it's just really, driven in you.
Thank you.
It's very, very cool. Anything else that you want to go ahead and discuss that we haven't touched base on?
I guess I also came across several people in trying to build the business as a woman, never underestimating the need for women to support women in whatever space you're in, whatever you're doing, right? To understand that you need to be able to do that in whatever it is that they're doing, whether you just show up for them in that space so that there's a friendly face in the audience that they recognize it, whatever it is that they're doing. Because I think, or the other thing that I guess I've learned part is make sure you celebrate the small things, because I think in general, women do not celebrate their successes and they're less likely to focus on their accomplishments. And I think you need to make a very deliberate choice to come up with a mechanism where every so often you say, okay, I'm going to celebrate this, because it brings that balance. And I think you need to make it a more deliberate step to recognize that you're in general not going to do that. And so you need to do that because you're less likely to.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like the celebrate the small wins.
Yes.
Celebrate the small stuff.
Yes.
We do that often here, don't we, Corinne? I'm going to go off cusp a little bit here. I make it a priority of we celebrate small things on a weekly basis of personal, professional, whatever that case may be.
Yeah. No, but I think that's important, right? I mean, because it's so much of what you do, you spend most of your time here, but you got to celebrate the little things that you do so that it brings you back, right? And recognize contributions or the successes or the wins, whatever they are.
Yeah. Can I ask you, what do you want to celebrate today? What's the win?
Agreeing to do this, because this process is definitely outside my comfort zone. So for me, just showing up here today is a win.
Yeah, I appreciate you're very authentic, and I appreciate you becoming very vulnerable today and opening up about the success of your business and where it started, and touching base upon not having to go to your dad for a loan, right? When you wanted to have TRM Environmental, that in itself is pretty empowering. And to know that you've mustered through the pandemic and you've overcame and you've increased your circle and community and network. So I think that's pretty awesome. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Somebody wants to connect with you. What's the best way, Catherine?
I guess the best way is there's a capture process on our website that will send information about what you want to talk, and it'll go directly to me, and I usually follow up within 24 hours when I get one of those. So I think I believe I have a button on my webpage on LinkedIn that'll take you there. So it's pretty simple. I try to point people in that direction. So I try to use the resource that the grant funding gave me, and that's the easiest way to connect with me directly.
What's the website address?
TRM Environmental.com.
Okay. Who is your dream client?
No, I've picked up litigation support recently. I I I I don't know necessarily the answer to that. I like most of my clients.
Sure.
I like construction 'cause I like seeing the construction environment. I like I there are things that pay better. Usually the litigation work is more highly compensated.
Yeah.
It's also more complex topics. But we also do work for private individuals and helping them solve very environmental issues for passion projects for them as well. So helping them resolve their issues so they can achieve their dreams is also, something else that we support.
So you like challenging problems?
Yes. I guess a problem solver.
I love it.
I'm probably not the person to come to for simple stuff because we're probably not super inexpensive, but if you have a complex issue and you want to try to find a path forward, then I'm all in.
Love it. Please check Catherine Dare out at trmenvironmental.com. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Griffiss Grounds and spending this entire afternoon with us talking. I really appreciate that. Thank you to our sponsors, Utica Coffee Roasting Company. Visit their site at uticacoffeeroasting.com. And until the next episode, stay curious, stay caffeinated, stay yourself, and be kind. Thank you.
Every day, we put into practice the belief that our community can be revitalized through responsible business development by giving back through innovation, standing out in the industry with new products, methods, and services. Most importantly, to roast and share our phenomenal coffee in that process.